Welcome, everybody. My name is Cesar Rondina, and I'm the author of the weekly blog post, The Author's Pen. So welcome to the February video blog post edition of The Author's Pen. The topic I've chose this month is sending the right message, and I'm going to tell you why I've chosen that topic. The reason I've chosen it is because since all the turmoil that has happened around the globe between the war in Ukraine and now Israel, I've received so many emails with people asking me my opinion about how these things are being handled. And this post is not, and I want to make this perfectly clear, is not about my opinion, because everybody has opinions. This post is really more about the basic facts about sending the right message. And these facts, as things pop up on my computer here, these facts apply to everything in life. They apply to how we communicate with one another, as well as how things are handled throughout the globe with these type of global conflicts. So, at the risk of not making this a 2-hour-long blog post, I'm just going to highlight some points about sending the right message. And forgive me for looking down, because this took a great deal of research and a lot of time for me to try and express this properly. The basics of sending the right message include a lot of things. Clarity, for one. Is our message clear? You know, we have this tendency of, when we talk to people or we take action, that action or the words we use, we beat around the bush and we don't get directly to the point, and we don't make our message perfectly clear. The second thing is the context of that message. What are we trying to say? What message are we trying to get across? Intent. What is the intent of our communications? Are we trying to solve a problem? Are we trying to talk about an issue, work an issue out? And that varies on what the problem is. But again, the basics are the same. The other thing is timing, especially in personal communications with people. Sometimes the time to talk to your significant other or your partner in life about a problem is not when you're having an argument. Sometimes you need to take a step back, let everything calm down, and then when people are more open to speak and they're more open-minded, that's the time to sit down. So timing is very important. The tone of our communications is also very important. Are we being pushy? Are we being aggressive? Are we being anti-productive? Are we being accusational? Or is our tone more open-minded to let the other side know that we're willing to discuss these issues, whatever they may be? Another aspect of it is active listening, meaning the other party has to be actively listening and be willing to listen. And then finally, feedback and adaptation, meaning what kind of feedback are we getting to the actions that we're taking or the words that we're saying? And we've all experienced this in life, and this really applies to everything in life. But when we talk about sending the right message, it's an essential skill to be effective, meaning it's essential that message gets across properly. Now, this has nothing to do whether it's a war, whether it's a conflict, whether it's an issue between two people on a personal level. These are just the basic skills when it comes to sending the right message. What I want to focus more on this month is our global conflicts, because I think everybody could agree, regardless of what your opinion is, regardless of who you feel may be right or wrong, the world is in tremendous turmoil, and a lot of things could happen. Things could escalate. Things could get out of hand very, very quickly. Now, there's a lot of schools of thought to this, and like everyone else, I've been following all these different conflicts on different news media outlets, and they all have their opinions. And many people, and it just seems to me to be, in my opinion, that the conclusion that most of the so-called experts are coming up with is that the deterrents that we are providing are not strong enough. So we're not sending the right message. Now, I'm not going to bash the Biden administration for doing that, because I also understand what they are doing. They don't want to over-escalate things. They're not looking for a war. The United States, unlike many of these terrorist nations, are humanitarians. We don't want to see innocent people killed, whereas these terrorist groups don't care about innocent people. And the attack on 9/11 certainly proves that, because it wasn't a strategic military attack on any of our military bases. They deliberately killed innocent people. So we know they don't care about innocent people. So it's very difficult to, for lack of a better term, fight a war or a conflict when you have this situation, because what we're going to do in retaliation, in most cases, is not going to be as strong as what was done to us. Whether that is right or wrong, I have my own opinions on that, and I'm sure you do. And like I said, this post is not about stating my opinion, it's about stating the basic concepts. So, in line with what I've outlined here, let's kind of look those over again. We've escalated, or these global situations have escalated now to a point where we've had almost nearly 200 attacks on our different military facilities in the Middle East. And up to recent events, there hasn't really been any deaths or serious injuries to our military personnel. That is now all changed. We have multiple traumatic injuries to our military personnel, and now we have 3 deaths. I would say, in my guess, that if things continue as they are now, will increase. So the question is, how do we stop that from increasing? So going back to the basic concept I talked about is clarity. Are we sending the right message? Are the responses that we are taking upon ourselves as a nation from a military standpoint to deter further actions, are they sending a clear message? I think and it makes sense when you think about it, I think our adversaries understand the context of why we're doing it and the intent as to why we're doing it. So that covers those 2 items. I think the timing is self-explanatory. The tone is questionable, all right? And when I say the tone of our response is questionable, is it serious enough? Are we sending the right deterrent messages? Are they strong enough? Are our adversaries listening? Do they really care? And what kind of feedback are we getting? Well, the feedback we're getting is very obvious. We retaliate, they retaliate, and it goes back and forth. Now, I'm not going to say I agree or disagree with this statement, but it does bring to mind a couple of quotes that I remember from the movie The Untouchables with Kevin Costner and Sean Connery. When Sean Connery made 2 important statements, if you think about it. If someone pulls out a knife, you pull out a gun. If someone sends one of your people to the hospital, you send one of theirs to the morgue. Now, that may sound very harsh, but if you look at the meaning of what that means, is you're sending a clear and present message that you're not going to tolerate it. And your response is going to be more devastating than the action taken upon you. Now, is that right or wrong? That's up to you to decide. I have my opinions on that. All right? But if we look at history and we look at the wars that our country has been in, every one of the wars that actually came to an end versus us just pulling our troops out in such conflicts like Desert Storm, Vietnam, so on and so forth, ended when the response that the United States took was so devastating that it created such damage and devastation to our adversaries, they couldn't go on with the fighting. They couldn't go on with the war. So it had to end. So history has taught us that some of the concepts that Sean Connery made in that movie make sense and, in fact, work. Now, what do we need to understand about war? And I am not an advocate of war. I want to make that perfectly clear. I think it's anti-productive. It leads to nothing good. Nothing good comes from war. Just look at the Gaza Strip. It is completely destroyed, completely leveled. It will take many, many years and cost billions of dollars to rebuild it. Not to even count the thousands or tens of thousands of lives, innocent lives, that have been lost. So, what is Israel doing? Israel is trying to make such a devastating response that Hamas or other terrorist organizations just don't want any part of it anymore. Will that work? I have no idea. I'm not a military strategist. Time will tell. But in theory, and speaking only in theory, when your retaliation response literally cripples your adversary, you have no choice, or there is no other choice but for it to end. And a perfect example of that was when President Trump, the Trump administration, was in, and we took out some of the terrorist leaders, and our retaliation was so strong, clear, present, the message was perfectly clear that no one wanted a part of it. So, how do we do that? Does it make sense to, and I'm not going to criticize the Biden administration for not wanting to see this conflict escalated or get out of control, but how do you stop it? All right, we know that one of the ways to stop it, Iran in the past, is to cripple their economy, take their means of making billions of dollars away by taking out their oil refineries. Okay, not necessarily their military installations where there might be innocent people involved. But war is a funny thing. There's always collateral damage, and you can't get away from it. So we are in a very, very difficult position here. And we, as the American people, have to look at history, have to look at these basic concepts of sending the right message and making that message perfectly clear in order for things to come to an end. If not, you wind up with these conflicts that go on for months, and even years. And the Vietnam War is a perfect example of it. The lives, needless lives, that were lost in that conflict from a military standpoint, even from an innocent people standpoint, was devastating. And to what end? There was no clear victor in that conflict. So, to add insult to injury, our administration continues to give Iran billions of dollars, which only allows them to fund the proxy terrorist organizations that they fund that are making these attacks on our shipping fleets in the Mediterranean Sea, our military fleets, so on and so forth, etc., etc. So I think what history has taught us is, whether we like it or not, I have to agree with some of these military retired strategy experts and say that our response needs to be clear, present, and devastating. And we have to look at what has worked with Iran in the past versus what's going on in the future, because in the present, because clearly how we're responding to this in the present is not working. Now, only time will tell if in the future it does. But meanwhile, if we run this experiment, how many more of our soldiers are going to get killed, our military personnel, and possibly innocent civilians? Okay? Look what happened with the war in Japan. That's another example. Pearl Harbor was attacked. It was a devastating attack on the United States. And that war went on until we finally dropped 2 bombs that killed hundreds of thousands, millions of people, but the effect was so devastating that Japan surrendered. Now, do we want to do that? I pray to God 7 days a week that we don't have to do that. But we do have the ability to cripple Iran's economic structure. And without that economic structure, and I do happen to believe that you take out 1 or 2 oil refineries and that message is going to be clear, and without that money and without that income, they just can't continue to go on. And it shows that sign of strength that, you know, if you poke the bear and the bear doesn't do anything, you keep poking the bear. But when you poke the bear and the bear bites your head off, well, guess what? You can't poke the bear anymore. So, you know, again, there's multiple opinions in the world and everybody has their right to it. But we have to think a little bit more strategically, and we have to understand that as much as we don't want any type of collateral damage, in any type of conflict, there is always collateral damage. The goal is to reduce that as much as possible. But bombing empty warehouses isn't going to get the job done. It's not going to send the right message. So, am I here to try and tell you what the answer is? No, I am not. I am here, and the purpose of this blog post is to maybe just try and help you all understand it a little bit differently. You know, the worst thing about the news media is that every news media network reports things differently. They report things based on their opinions. And sometimes that confuses us as American citizens. And it could sway or taint our own opinions. And that is something that we have to try to avoid. And that's the purpose of this blog post, is to look at this from a realistic standpoint, whether we agree with it, whether we like it or not. This is the position that we're in. And the one opinion I will give you, that I don't want to see any more American lives lost. And the United States needs to do what they need to do to ensure that that won't happen. So armed with that's my comments about sending the right message, and you can form your own opinions, and I respect those, and I hope you respect mine. And my next video blog post will probably be not in March, probably in April. This year I've got 2 books coming out, so time is very, very tight for me. A lot of things going on. But I do continue with the weekly blog posts, and I urge everyone, subscribe to my YouTube or Vimeo channels, and subscribe to my blog. We don't share information, we never will, and all you have to provide is an email address, and you'll get one email a week with a link when a blog is posted. Very, very simple, but I do appreciate the support by having an increase in subscribers to my blog. With that, I wish you all well, and remember the 3 things that I live by and I think are very important is just always live with an open heart, live with an open mind, and live your best life. God bless America, and God bless you. Thank you very much.